I recently heard of this pastor who came into his office, and shortly after he came in, a parishioner came in and she says, "You know my brother, don't you?" The pastor was taken back by this question. Right away, he had no idea that she had a brother, let alone that it would be somebody that he would even know. The woman continued. She says, "My brother's name is Joe." Well, and he goes to the 8 o'clock service. And he says, "I do know Joe, but I'm kind of embarrassed that I didn't even know that this was her brother." So he said, "I had no idea. How could I have missed this?" And she continued. She says, "Well, it all happened several years ago, about a few years before you got here. And, right after Mom died, was one of those times when, my brother was just going in there. Being the oldest, he gets first pick of everything in the house. And, well, his wife says, 'Go in and take the best china.' And Mom had promised me that best china a year ago, and before she died. And, well, that started the whole thing. That started everything. I don't talk to him. I don't want to even see him. That's why he worships at 8 o'clock, and I worship at 9:30. If we even gaze upon each other, I'll turn and look away. If I come by him in the hallway, I'll turn and look away. I won't even speak to him. The sight of him just disgusts me." The pastor really began to realize just what need of reconciliation was needed in this relationship. He hadn't noticed it before, but now it was all too clear. So neither of them was willing to change. Neither of them was willing to leave the church, and it's a good thing. Because broken relationships, they bring a mountain of pain, a mountain of heartache. I think we've all experienced a few broken relationships. Maybe when your best friend moves away and promises, "Oh, I'll keep in touch with you. We'll call, we'll write." And as they drive out of sight, that's the last you ever hear or see him again. Or maybe it's that son or daughter that takes off, they're ready to be on their own, or they go off to college and, "Oh, I'll be in contact. We'll call every day, we'll talk." And day after day, nothing. Just silence. Yes, relationships can be painful, and sometimes they're rather agonizing. And if you don't believe me, just ask God. The Old Testament is littered with examples of broken relationships. Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. And then there's Israel has just been led out of Egypt, out of the house of slavery at Mount Sinai, and they begin to worship the golden calf. God tells the Israelites, "I will be your king." And instead, they choose Saul to be their king. Each and every time the Israelites they turned away from God. They broke their relationship. They severed that relationship that they had with God. They rejected Him. And it seems that you and I, maybe unintentionally, the same can be said for us. Sin. Sin comes in, it breaks that relationship between us and God. But you know what relationships need? They all need reconciliation. They need a chance to come back together. It's not easy. It's hard. But this is kind of the message that we get today from our gospel reading. It's a melody of reconciliation. God deeply desires an intimate relationship with each and every one of us, with each and every one of His creatures, the things that He created. That's what He desires. But sin separates us. It keeps us apart. And I could think of no other better way to put it together than to say, on a piece of paper, it's God and us. We're joined together. And then sin. Just one sin comes along. It tears the relationship apart. Now, no matter what I do, no matter how hard I try, the broken relationship is there. Oh, I could tape it, I could glue it, but it would never be the same. It's not quite the same relationship that we once had. It's broken. It's severed. It's hard to bring it back together. There's nothing we can do. Nothing that we can do to bring the relationship back together. But thanks be to God. He loves us so much that He couldn't just take that separation from His children. From His creation, He wants this relationship more than anything. That's why He sent His Son, Jesus. To be born of a Virgin Mary, to be raised by Mary and Joseph, baptized by John, tempted by the devil in the desert. He healed the sick. He raised the dead. He's betrayed by Judas. He's arrested. He's beaten. He's crucified on the cross and then died in 3 days. He rises from the grave. Jesus' birth, His death, and His resurrection. This is what brought reconciliation between us and God. This is how the relationship is mended back together as one. No more tearing, no more brokenness. It's one. It's a melody of reconciliation. It's a melody that is written by God Himself. No one else could write it. No one else could do it. It took God to do it. And that entire message of reconciliation is summarized for us in the gospel reading in Matthew, chapter 1 at verse 21. And the angels, the messengers of God, come to Joseph and they summarize this entire melody of reconciliation for us. They say, "You, Joseph, shall call his name Jesus. He will save his people from their sins." This is the melody that we, the church, can speak. This is the melody of reconciliation that we can bring out to the people, to the not yet Christian, to the one who's still suffering there, separated from God, needing that chance to come back in, so that their voices can join our voices to come to the great choir of angels and sing the praises of God for restoring us back together. All in His wonderful Son, the babe of Bethlehem, is it restored in Jesus Christ. The melody of reconciliation continues on, as it has for thousands of years. And amen, that God has done it for each and every one of us.